about that. Okay, so let's just go down the line and answer this first question, Charlie, which is, who helped themselves? Who hurt themselves? Who just sort of treaded water?
Okay, I do think that Biden helped himself. He had high energy. He showed he was willing to stand toe-to-toe with his critics. And as I mentioned before, I think he benefited by being next to Bernie Sanders. I think that Mayor Pete also benefited himself. He is such an impressive, interesting politician. I don't know that he's going to get the buzz out of this that he deserves, but his performance was about as good as you could expect from a first-time presidential candidate. I think that a lot of buzz is going to be, was this Kamala Harris's breakout moment? I see that Politico's already put out an alert, Kamala Harris breaks out. I guess I would dissent from that in two ways. Yes, she got a lot of attention. Number one, though, she doubled down on the abolition of private health insurance, which I'm not sure is an asset. Number two, she was the one who basically tried to take down Joe Biden. I'm not sure she succeeded. And so here you have a week after, when the President of the United States, credibly accused of rape, refuses to apologize to the Central Park Five. They didn't ask about the Mueller report, obstruction of justice, so what does she do? She tries to turn the debate into a circular firing squad. I'm not sure that works for her.
Very interesting.
Oh, and by the way, and then the no-hopers.
Yeah, so nobody really, the top tier remains the top tier.
The top tier, and Eric Swalwell, didn't, whatever he was trying to do didn't work.
Yeah, all right. But did you have any differences of opinion with Charlie on who you saw really helping themselves, or maybe not?
I basically agree with I almost always agree with what Charlie says. But, let's talk for just a second, if you don't mind, about the unfairness of this debate. There were no rules. They didn't say, look, each person is going to get 30 seconds to answer. If you are directly attacked, you get 15 seconds for a quick response. No, it was whoever would push themselves forward was given an opportunity to speak. Even then, the moderators would frantically attempt to refuse to let them speak, only then to give in. It looked completely chaotic. I don't know about you, but I wanted to get a shock collar for Kirsten Gillibrand. I mean, she was just unbelievably aggressive.
I agree with that, too, yeah.
I mean, it was just, so I just found the whole thing, I think it put the candidates in a very bad...
in a bad light.
In a bad light, and I think it was unfair to the viewers. That much having been said, I do think that, that I agree that Mayor Pete is even though I don't agree with him on anything, I don't think, but he is so intelligent that his calm and reasonable and intelligent approach to issues is just such a refreshing change from the screamers. And most of the 20 candidates that we've seen over the last two nights are just ignorant screamers.
John Dickerson, I want to...
Speaking of ignorant screamers, you've come to me.
I did want to come to you. Because to address what Mona was saying about the organizers of the debate, the moderators of the debate, as somebody who's actually moderated a debate, if you want to weigh in on how they did and what it's like to be up there.
Well, first of all, there, but for the grace of God. I mean, it's very, very, very hard, because what you only see a little bit of there is when a candidate's giving an answer, if you're a moderator, every other candidate is trying to get your attention because they want to jump in. And so you end up doing this weird thing where you either can't look at any of them, which makes it look like you're in a hostage video, or you have to kind of nod and acknowledge to all of them, which looks like you've taken some bad medicine or something. So I think what they should do with these debates is you get a budget as a candidate to butt in on, and your butt-in budget is a minute and a half. If you go over that, then that detracts from the minutes you get to answer straight-up questions. So you can spend your time jumping in and all that, but then you're just not going to be heard from again. And so they should have a mechanism like that. It's super hard to do this, to keep them all under control. I'm not a big fan of the hand-raising questions. I don't think they do much for us. And, I have different kinds of questions I would ask, but I'm incredibly sympathetic to how difficult it is. I'm not sure you need so many moderators. These debates tend to be about promoting, and this is not, I'm not talking about any one network. They tend to be about promoting the networks. They're announced. You expect, after those Voice of God announcements, you expect everybody to come out in boxing shorts. So I don't think that's so great either.
Yeah.
And I have thoughts on the candidates as well, but I
know. I'll get to you, John. You're pulling from your bank right now. Senator Heitkamp, I want you to weigh in on those questions, but I also wanted to read the one tweet that the president tweeted during this debate. All Democrats just raised their hands for giving millions of illegal aliens unlimited health care. How about taking care of American citizens first? That's the end of this race. You and I have talked about the role that immigration is going to play in 2020. Just how difficult is this issue going to be for Democrats, whoever the nominee is, going up especially in these swing states?
I mean, I cannot emphasize to you enough the two issues that were on this platform today, that moderates in places where you might be able to swing some votes, it's abortion and immigration. And what they heard was a far left agenda. And if I'm the Republican Party and I'm watching this, and I know we think they're all really, really smart and engaged and beautiful people, I know most of these people up there, but if I'm the Republican, I think I won this debate. Because I know that things were done today that will enable me to make the argument tomorrow, that I can, in fact, paint you as the extremists and me as the moderate. Trump knows that this has got to be an election about a choice. That's why he's saying this. It cannot be a referendum on his deplorable behavior. It can't be a referendum on his deplorable agenda, his failure to do what he promised to do. It's got to be a choice. That's how he won the last time. That's how he plans on winning this time. With that said, there needs to be a moderate message up there. Now, the good news about this debate is it was much more moderate. There were much more moderation in opinions than there were last night. But I will tell you that there is, it just as he's hitting while he's striking while the iron is hot, right? He's saying, look here, they're for giving away free stuff, and they are for letting anyone come into this country who is going to affect your security and your stability of this country. And oh, by the way, this Medicare for all, it won't work, and you don't want it. And so he sees in this the opportunity to be the outsider. I mean, think about that. Now he's run the government by the time the election comes around for almost 4 years, and he's going to run as the outsider. And I think when you look on that stage, the only person that Trump is afraid of is Joe Biden. That's the only person that he's afraid of who was on that stage tonight.
Fatima, what do you think about that, about Biden being the only one that Trump would be nervous about?
It may be that he thinks that. I think there are more people who he should be afraid of.
Okay.
I think if you look tonight at Kamala Harris, including in the no rules format, that she was able to take advantage of the no rules, create calm on the stage, and get her message out there. And so I keep thinking around immigration that the Democrats need to keep focus on babies in cages, on children on concrete floors, that's what this president has done, and that his agenda left so many vulnerable families. That's a message that will appeal to mothers. When people see young children and babies separated from their families, they need to keep laser focused on that.
Could I jump in and say a word about...
I just want to say, did you notice there was one hand that didn't go up, that they never went back to? Who was that? Michael Bennett. They never went back to Michael Bennett when he did not raise his hand.
Let me just say a word about Kamala Harris. Again, I have very, very serious substantive problems with her positions, particularly her reliance on executive orders, which is unconstitutional. But leaving that aside, this is I think I praised Buttigieg's intelligence. She's also an incredibly impressive piece of horseflesh, as they say in politics. You know, she has poise, she has passion, she has intelligence. She's attractive. She has a lot going on, and I think she had a very good night.
John?
Well, just on the executive order point, I think Mona's right. As a constitutional matter, especially with a court that's 5-4 conservatives, those executive orders, they won't happen. Now, this brings up two interesting things. One is, in politics, a lot of times you say things you know are never going to happen.
John, can I interrupt you now?
The Mexicans are going to build the wall would be one of them. And so what Donald Trump did quite effectively is say something that was outrageous, and every time somebody said, well, the Mexicans are never going to pay for the wall, he got 10 more minutes to talk about how he was going to build a wall. And so he sent that message to his voters both the first time and then when he was fact-checked. So it's quite effective politically. But I think constitutionally, there would obviously be problems. And also running a presidency through executive order is not actually the way to run a railroad, because then you have new presidents come in and undo the previous executive orders. Anybody who remembers the Mexico City policy remembers what this is like. So it ends up making life quite miserable for Americans when you have executive orders, one president undone by the other. But if I could just say one thing about Kamala Harris's moment, it was quite amazing, I think, for this reason. You know, these debates, you build on things. You have to grow in each one. You don't have to you don't have to eat the whole thing at once. You just need to, in each debate, do better for yourself. And what she did, I thought that was, first of all, that clip's going to be shown all night long everywhere. So it lives on afterwards. Pollsters will tell you that, in fact, people take their impressions not from what we saw tonight, but from what gets played over and over in the days. So what does she get? She's toe-to-toe with Joe Biden, who's the front runner. So she's on equal footing. That's one thing she wants. The other thing she wants is a generational fight. I was a kid when the busing was going on. You were already in Congress. The other thing that's going on is obviously there's a gender problem that Biden's got. It includes Anita Hill. It includes some other things that puts him in an uncomfortable position. So she is taking the number one person on the stage, made it personal, which is very hard for Biden to do, to respond to, because it's her personal experience. And if the first job of a leader is to seize power, that's what these campaigns are about. And she took a moment and she seized power for herself. Now, her campaign may implode tomorrow and that's it. This is a moment. But to the extent that you want moments in a campaign, she had one, and it'll be replayed over and over again. I think Buttigieg had a strong night. But I think those are a lot of the things. Also, people wonder who can take on Donald Trump. If she was able to grab a moment and take on Joe Biden in what was clearly a set-piece, rehearsed moment, then that suggests perhaps to Democratic voters who are assessing whether these candidates can take on Donald Trump that she has, as a former prosecutor, some of those skills in that hand-to-hand combat. Again, campaign may implode tomorrow, but when you have a moment, to be able to check that many boxes is pretty good.
Well, yeah, but also they're going to be showing Biden pushing back. And I think that was the big question. Was Biden going to fold? Was Biden going to stumble? Was Biden going to apologize? And he was very, very aggressive. So if the people are looking for an energetic defense by Joe Biden, and I'm really not sure that Americans, including Democrats, want to relitigate the busing debate of the 1970s, you know.
You make a great point. The question is, she's talking about busing back then. What's she saying about Joe Biden now?
Right.
Now, when she gets asked that in some one-on-one interview, if she doesn't come with the same thunder that she brought tonight, then the question is, well, wait a minute. What are you really saying? And if you don't have the courage of your convictions, then she takes off the table all the things I think she put on tonight.
Right. But his response on busing needs some work. In this moment where we're having incredible civil rights fights to make a state rights argument on civil rights, he's going to have problems. He needs that argument needs a little bit of work.
Do you want to also weigh in on I saw you getting as the National Women's Law Center. Can you, do you want to weigh in on executive orders?
There was a case,
moving.
Just this week, the Supreme Court upheld the Hour case, which basically says that agencies can put out these sorts of rules and give deference. And so, the idea that all executive action is automatically unconstitutional, there is a political argument to make about building consensus in Congress and using executive action as a last resort. But I don't think we should assume that even in this very closely divided Supreme Court, which there should have been more conversation about, that all executive actions would be held unconstitutional. I think that's probably not right.
That's a red herring. I didn't say all executive action is unconstitutional. I said the kind that Kamala Harris is talking about. What did she propose? She said, I will send common sense gun control legislation to Congress. I will give them 100 days to pass this legislation that I like. If they fail to do it, I will be forced to act, and I will do this unilaterally by executive action. She does not have that power under the Constitution.
No one cares in the Democratic Party whether she has that power. No one watching cares. What they care about is that Donald Trump does it, and they want someone to do it back on their
awful.
issues.
That
it
is
is
exactly
awful.
that's
I don't
the opposite
disagree
of-
with you, Mona.
Okay.
I'm just saying that you got to understand who the audience is here. And the audience is not the Supreme Court. The audience is all the Democrats who feel like this guy has usurped executive power when Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, I had to suffer through hours of debates on their side when Obama did it, and they walk away when somebody else doesn't do it.
Hold on.
And Democrats sit and say, why do we have to put up with this?
Okay. That's a really good speech, and that's the royal road to ruining our democracy.
Oh, I don't disagree with you.
It is.
No,
Let me
I
explain.
don't disagree with her.
Okay.
But let me
Yeah.
tell you, I'm telling
Yeah.
you who the audience is
Yeah,
tonight.
well, but here's the deal. Barack Obama did abuse his power, as you say.
I didn't say he abused his power. I said he used his power.
Well, okay, I say he abused it. He overstepped the executive
But the courts
authority that
haven't
he
said
had.
he has
And there were
overstepped,
plenty
where
of
they've said Trump has
Republicans. There were
overstepped.
plenty of Republicans who said he's overstepping his bounds. He really shouldn't. This is a problem. And then when Trump did it, most Republicans fell silent.
It's okay.
Most Republicans said this is totally fine. And if this is the road we're going to be going down, where our guy can break the law and it's fine, but your guy can't, then we're going to become a lawless nation.
Okay, well, hold on.
I don't disagree with you. I think this is about debate reaction.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm telling you that that's not
That's right.
Kamala's finest moment. Kamala's finest moment is she said, you shouldn't have to work 3 jobs in America to make a living. You shouldn't have to worry about where your kids are going to school. Her finest moment tonight was when she went to the bread and butter, kitchen table issues, and she empathized and said, I'm going to fix this for America.
Okay,
Okay, hold on. I do want to get to questions. We have like 15 seconds. So before we go to questions, so I want you guys to be thinking about it. Well, I know, but
So,
I want to have
how many
15
people in
minutes
this
for their
room
questions.
think that Donald Trump was justified in declaring an emergency order to build a wall on the border, right? You thought this was great. This was a good thing, right? So how many people? Like 2. How many people thought that that was a dangerous attack on constitutional norms? And yet, are you now prepared to say, because he's done that, if there's a Democrat, we're going to, because Donald Trump did it, we're going to have dangerous attacks on constitutional norms? Because that's what Mona is saying here, where you have this spiral effect. I want to go back to something that Senator Heitkamp said before, because it's so important on these issues. You mentioned the 2 issues that turn moderates. On abortion, immigration, I would also say guns. These are all potential winners for the Democrats. But when you're talking about mandatory gun buybacks, when you're talking about taxpayer funding for abortion without limits, when you're talking about taxpayer-paid health care benefits for illegal immigrants, look, how do you think that plays in rural Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, and Florida? How do you think that plays in Texas? This election is going to be decided in those states. So go into those areas that have been voting increasingly Republican and say, this is what we stand for. This is this is like we're trying to wave the red flag. You understand that, yes, they may be making these primary debate issues, but YouTube is forever. And right now, the Trump campaign is cutting up these viral videos saying these people want to give your money to illegal immigrants. These people want to use your tax dollars to pay for abortions. These people want to give away lots of free stuff to other people. These people want to raise your taxes. And I think that's something that I hope the Democrats will step back and go, okay, really, what are we trying to do, win the primary or win the presidency?
Hey, John, again, I'm going to go to you guys in this one moment, but did this debate fundamentally change how this, where the front runners are in this race? Is Joe Biden still going to come out of this as the front guy, and that...
Yeah,
are we going to see any movement at all?
Well, I think you'll see movement up by Harris, and I think you'll see Buttigieg and Biden roughly stay in the same places. There are people, there are people who miss there. I think Bernie Sanders kind of got lost in this, so it's probably not great for him as one of the... Because remember, again, most people take their impressions of these debates on what's played afterwards for the next 3 days, what's passed around on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. And so any of us can pick any little moment and say, this was the moment. But that's not the moment unless people marinate in it for the several days afterwards. Now, unfortunately, the moments that get picked tend to be the ones that are very dramatic often. The ones that get sent around because we send around things that are emotionally charged, not the things that are boring and put us to sleep. Those tend to be these confrontational moments, or the quip from Buttigieg about, I don't know who he's going to have pissed off by the time we get around to the next presidency. So I think when you think through how people respond to these debates, you have to think about how they then get chopped up and sent out into the world over the next couple of days before we really have any sense of what people will take from this.
Let's take a couple of questions. I don't know where the mic runners are, but if you could just go right back there to anyone, just go pick. I can't see anything, so you go ahead.
I would like to ask what you thought about how the moderators really influenced the talking points and how it swayed. There seemed to be the moderators really loved Buttigieg. Am I saying that right? Gig or Buttigieg? Anyway. I thought the moderators controlled more than they did last night about who they asked questions and who they turned off. And I'm just interested in what you thought.
Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
Was Marianne Williamson given more than 2 questions? Well, not that she
Gratefully, no.
Yeah, by the way, why was Marianne Williamson on that stage and not the elected governor of Montana?
Well, because he didn't live up to the rules.
I understand, but
I mean,
this is the problem of having to watch
you guys are rules. The rules were really clearly stated.
No, I understand.
Early on, and he didn't.
I just wish I had a mute button.
Okay.
I actually thought the moderators did a surprisingly good job, with the exception of the failure to cut people off when they were. And I guess I disagree with John. I actually like the raising the hands because you have 11 people on stage, and to get people on the record was actually some of the more informative moments of this. I wish they would have asked questions. I asked Bernie Sanders, yesterday you proposed wiping out $1.6 trillion in student loan debt and paying for that by taxing every single stock and bond transaction in America, which is your 401k plan. I would have loved to have heard a discussion about what other debts might you want to cancel, those sorts of things. But I actually thought they did a good job.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I wondered the logic of each of the participants spending so much time running against Trump as opposed to each other. I understand they need to look forceful against Trump and that kind of stuff, but by definition, they're running against Trump. Why did they spend so much time on that and not use it for why they should win amongst them, between each other?
I think it actually is a smart strategy. I think that if you're kind of undecided at this point, you want to know what case they're going to make against this president. And I think that only a couple people, and I think Michael may have done it in the end, Michael Bennett, where he talked about dignity. Dignity. I'm going to restore dignity. And so I think that what people want to see is not you beating up on Biden. They don't want to see that kind of rancor because they think it weakens the Democratic Party and the field overall. What they really want to see is what's your case against Donald Trump? And I honestly think that one of the people on the stage, although, intellectuals love to love Mayor Pete. I mean, he's got all the credentials in the world. And I get that. And he's very compelling for people who think in lofty terms. But he made, in my opinion, the best case on character against Donald Trump. When he attacked him on religion, that was a moment, and no one here has talked about it when he said, that's not great. My Christian religion, to put kids in cages. And so I think that even though he was very intellectual and very polished, he's obviously got a resume that doesn't end. He made the best case, in my opinion, tonight against Donald Trump.
Let's go, we'll go over to this side. Yeah, can you get someone back there? That'd be great.
Okay. After watching last night and watching tonight, I couldn't help but notice a huge difference in the tone and the rhetoric. How much do you think the people tonight learned from the people last night? Did they look at polls, Twitter? What was influencing them? Or was it just the character of the people that happened to be on this panel?
Yeah, I think it helps to have, there's a reason that the people who are polling, the top 5 people in the polls, were all on stage tonight, and the one person who was in the lead in the polls was on the stage last night. There's a reason for that, right? That wasn't, the reason that debate looked as good as it did is you really did have the strongest competitors, which also suggests that the polls are pretty right on who is the real contender, or who the field of real contenders are. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Okay. Yeah. Can you just wait for...
Hi, this is questions for Amy and John. I always hear you guys talking sort of in a horse race type analysis of the post-debate conversation and not the issues as much. Foreign policy barely got mentioned in last night and tonight's debate. I think 7 minutes was given to climate change yesterday. Tonight it was 8 minutes. One of my takeaways would be if I was in a political junkie is, really policy doesn't matter. Elizabeth Warren is now the person with the plan, but if you go to her website, she doesn't have a plan around foreign policy. And 2 weeks ago, the media had me on the verge of a war with Iran. So what's really going on here? It feels like it's entertainment, and it's the way that, I hate to sound like Jon Stewart, it's all about clickbait. But what does it take in order to have the discussion around the follow-up question? I live in Colorado. John Hickenlooper has done nothing to help us with climate change. He is always consistently avoiding the truth, shall we say, on his record, and there's no follow-up question to that. I know Michael Bennett's record extremely well. He hasn't started yelling until about 6 months ago. You didn't know of him for 10 years.
Okay. John, do you want to start?
Sure. But now, was your point about Bennett yelling a policy point or a behavioral point?
It just seems that the analysis is always about the horse
Right.
race or about the action.
Sure.
Right.
No, I know.
Not what is the follow-through of somebody's idea?
Sure. Totally agree. Father's Day 2020, there will be a book out about the disconnect between what the job of the presidency is and how we run our campaigns, so you can order it now. I just have to finish writing it.
Any particular author?
But yeah. But I think, and I just want to, just implicit in your question, by the end, you started out on policy, at the end, you were critiquing Bennett's behavior. So I understand. I don't mean to put you on the spot. My point is we're humans, and that we react this way to debates. I think what would solve the policy problems is a couple of things. One, fewer candidates.
Yes.
Two, more, basically, debates. The candidates need to start sharpening the differences with each other. We're not anywhere close to that. They're still introducing themselves. I think Kamala Harris, notwithstanding, who made a choice to seize a moment. I think that for those of us who want to be active participants in the life of ideas and policy, one benefit we do have now that we didn't have in the past is that any of us can go listen to interviews with these candidates on podcasts, on, 2-hour-long interviews on podcasts with these candidates in which it goes to a really deeper level. So I think we have to go seek it out a little bit. I have some very esoteric ideas about debates that would basically have only about 4 people watching. But I think, I think you're generally right. But I think at this stage, when you got so many candidates.
Right. Exactly right. Too many candidates, not very much time. Remember, winnowing is going to start to happen. We're going to see fewer candidates on stage. The closer we get to the primaries, the more these debates are going to be focused on the kinds of things that you're talking about, the distinctions and how these policies, the pushback on the policies, you say you did these things, but let me push back on X, Y, and Z from the moderators. They don't have time to do that with 10 people on stage. You can't have that level of debate. The second is, there is more information now on these candidates. They have sat in town halls answering questions for 2 hours. If you want to know about policy, there is no excuse to not know it. They've been doing it on CNN every week. Every one of these candidates has done it. They've done it on Fox. They've done it on MSNBC. So there is policy to drown in right now. This is just one time where you get to see all of them together. The first time you get to see them have to sort of stand up against one another. And let's face it, the president, what he's been so successful in doing and why he was so successful in 2016 is his presence and his ability to do very well at the reality TV portion of campaigning. He was very good at it, and he was also very good in those debates in making Hillary Clinton look like she was the one who was not experienced enough as an on-screen presence, right? So the person who is best able to defeat Donald Trump, I think, has to be able to pass the TV test, has to be able, as Senator Heitkamp and Mona talked about, that when you turn the sound off, you're going to look up and go, yeah, I could see that person as president. Yeah. That's how most people watch politics. They pay 0.00005% of their life thinking about it. They're going to look up, they're going to listen a little bit, but they're not going to be doing the kind of, they're not going to be critiquing this in the way that those of us who follow it for a living will be doing. Go ahead on, all the way over. This is going to be our last question, too.
Okay,
Thank you.
Well, picking up on policy, do you think there was a deliberate decision not to ask the candidates about Israel, Palestine, what's going on, the deal of the century, that they felt perhaps the candidates and the interviewers themselves didn't want to get into such hot water on that?
Take that.
I think it was probably on one of those cards that they couldn't get to because of all the filibustering. I mean, I understand that there's only so much time and they had only so much control, and every time things went a lot longer, more cards got lost because that's an obvious question. It's an important question, and I'm certain that I don't think that they had a reason not to ask the question. I just don't think they got to it.
Yeah, I think that's very good. No. Hey, thank you, especially to all of you folks who asked questions, who stayed back for this portion, and thank you, please, to all the panelists who participated in this process. Thank you, guys.